This edition of MacVoices is supported by Screencasts Online, your source for new Mac and iOS tutorials every week. To learn more and for a 14-day free trial, visit screencastsonline.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is a talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we've got another Take Control author on the line. It seems like we've got a lot of them lately, but they just keep churning out the great books. This time, we get to welcome Josh Centers back. He's the author of the new iOS 8, a Take Control crash course. Josh, it's great to see you here solo. You were here not too long ago on the Mac Jury.
Yeah, it'd been a while before that. So thanks for having me back, Chuck. As always.
Hey, it's always fun, and I know you've been hiding under a rock for a while, working on this new book, and it seems like this is the book that could never be finished.
Well, it's about an OS that seems like it never could be finished, and even now there's still a few pieces that seem like they probably need to be polished out a bit more. But yeah, it's been an interesting challenge because it's a brand new format for us, the Crash Course series, and then on top of that, even when iOS 8 was launched, it still felt like a beta. It didn't really feel solid and stable, at least to me, until 8.1. And that's when they finally brought in Apple Pay and they actually finalized the feature set. And it's very hard to hit a moving target. And even though these are digital books and we can update them pretty easily, in fact, the other Crash Course books I think are being updated for some minor things. But we still want to try to release it in as finished a state as we can get it into. And we just had the problem of trying to making sure it was in a finished state while we're looking at other things that were coming up soon on the horizon. And, eventually they just decided, okay, we need to focus on the Yosemite book and both of those and get that out. And then we can get iOS 8 out after, the operating system itself and the book is finished. So it's been an interesting exercise.
Yeah, I would say so. And it seemed like iOS 8, this was a little bit of a different kind of iOS rollout for Apple. They released it, then they did a couple updates, then they did, sort of a one big update. And I understand, the timing with Yosemite and Apple Pay and a few things, but it just seemed a little strange the way that it happened over the space of, 2-3 weeks, I think?
Right, yeah. It was over the span of roughly a month between something like that, between when it was originally released and I felt like it was finished. Because when it was released, and it was tied to the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus launches, and so when you booted up your iPhone 6 or when you installed iOS 8, you were prompted to enable iCloud Drive. And it really strongly encourages you because it's like, please turn this on. Like, no, I don't want to. And they say, please strongly consider turning it on. And then you turn it on, and if you're a poor sap running Mavericks, you couldn't access your files anymore. And because they did not build iCloud Drive access into Mavericks, you had to wait till Yosemite. And that's what's puzzled me the most about this entire thing is that they designed iOS 8 and Yosemite as this package deal, and then they released one part. They released like one leg of the tripod like a month before the rest, and Apple TV is another leg of that. Yeah, it was it was very strange, and I had to warn all of us at Tidbits and Take Control were having to warn users: do not turn on iCloud Drive unless you're prepared to deal with those consequences. Don't be a little leery of iCloud Photo. As a matter of fact, I was involved in the iOS 8 beta. Well, I had to be to get this book up and going this summer. And even a day before iOS 8 came out, there were features that were not working. And I was warning people the day before it came out. I'm like, don't install this just yet. It's not ready. Now, thankfully, there was I guess a switch on Apple's end they could turn on, and those things suddenly started working. Like, for instance, just the day before iOS 8 came out, none of us could get handoff to work. Some of the apps with extensions were released early, but the extensions wouldn't work. Just lots of the big features in iOS 8 just wouldn't work. Were not working, and then Apple fixed that. But then there was other things that required Yosemite or relied on Yosemite for full functionality, and you had to wait another month for that. So it was challenging there for a while. And another thing they did, going back to the iCloud Drive thing, is they made it so you couldn't access your iWork and the cloud documents from iCloud.com except unless you turned on iCloud Drive. So I actually had a friend who she was still on Mavericks because Yosemite wasn't out yet. She had iOS 8 and she couldn't figure out whether to turn Drive on or not because she suddenly she couldn't access her stuff from the browser. She could access it from the Mac, but then she didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to tell her, other than wait, wait and hope.
Yeah, that seems to be sort of a hallmark of this transition, the iOS 8 transition and the Yosemite transition. I think once everybody gets on the other side of it, it's going to be fairly smooth sailing. But there's this gray area in here that is a little strange. How much of this do you try to steer people through in the book, at least from the iOS 8 perspective?
Right. Well, a lot of that I left to the Joe's Digital Sharing book because we kind of released this book as a 3-part series. And that was an interesting part of the production too, because there's some things we could not figure out, like where does this go? What does this fall under? And you can buy all 3 as a bundle, which I highly recommend because the operating systems come as a bundle. But
and Josh, before you go farther, I want to make sure which 3 are we talking about? We're talking about yours, obviously.
Yes. The Yosemite A Take Control Crash Course and Joe Kissel's Digital Sharing for Apple Users A Take Control Crash Course. Those 3 can be purchased as a bundle. And I would recommend that because they all complement each other in different ways. And we all collaborated on the 3 books. But I do cover...
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but now...
Oh, no. Yeah. No, it's fine. But we do. I do cover in the book things like iCloud Drive and the decision whether to enable it or not. I do cover handoff. I cover an interesting feature of iOS 8 that's kind of been overlooked is suggested apps. And it's this thing where if you're at a location that has an app tied to it, like for instance, if you have the Apple Store app installed and you go to an Apple Store, on your lock screen, you'll see a little icon. And actually it works through the same mechanism as handoff. So, and even the setting for it is in the same place. So you slide that icon up and it launches the Apple Store app. So yeah, all that sort of stuff, I cover. And kind of the thing with the Crash Course books is we give the high points of things, but there's still a lot of detail in that. And this is my second Take Control book. My first was the Apple TV book, and I honestly have to say I think even though this book is almost half the size page wise, it has just as much, if not more, detail than the Apple TV book because there are so many little details we went over and debated about and filled in. So yeah, it ended up, even though it was supposed to be, a crash course, it ends up being a very detailed sort of book.
That's a detailed kind of iOS because there's so much to it. And I love the fact when I have the Take Control authors on that they give us just a little peek behind the curtain, and I don't think it's lost on the audience that there is a lot of discussion and debate about what goes in the book. It would be real easy in some ways to make this a 500-page book.
Oh yeah.
But who wants to write a 500-page book? Who wants to buy and try to wade through a 500-page book? So,
and by the time I had finished it, it'd be iOS 9, and you won't want to read the book anymore.
Yeah. So, the fact that there is so much thought and research that goes into this to tell us the high points we need to know. And then if you have a particular feature you need to dig down deep in, well, that may be another Take Control book or another resource entirely. So,
right.
Okay, handoff. Well, before we get to handoff, let me just do a general question because I love to ask this question with books like this. Any surprises that you ran into when you were going through iOS 8? Anything that you surprised you or you think people need to be aware of that might surprise them?
Oh, okay. Well, it's nothing specific to iOS 8 itself per se, but I have to say the one thing that surprised me the most, and it's funny, if you ever write a book about something you use every day, you realize certain truths that you otherwise wouldn't be aware of. Like, it's kind of like if you walk on a road that you're used to driving past and you notice all these things you've never noticed before when you're just driving past in a car. It's kind of like that. And the thing I realized is that iOS is actually, in a lot of ways, way more complicated than the Mac OS. And the reason for that is there's only one Yosemite. I mean, some of the features may not work on your Mac, but the interface will be the same. iOS changes depending on whether you're running it on an iPhone or iPad or even an iPod Touch, and it makes things interesting from a technical perspective. When I'm trying, you're trying to write directions for people, and there's a lot of things you take for granted, like, oh, this button's in the lower left. Well, not always in the lower left. Like if it's in landscape mode, it might be here, or if you're on the iPad, it might be here. So, it was one of those things that became a challenge for me was, making sure I'd covered all the platforms properly. I'd covered all the, scenarios. There were a lot of things that were, well, if this, then that, and we're trying to do it in a concise way. So that was a unique challenge. iOS 8 itself, I can't say anything that really surprised me. I guess the one thing that probably surprised me most, and this would be another show, but how primitive the third-party keyboards are, how little Apple actually gives developers to work with. Like for instance, the next keyboard button, there's no standard for how to change keyboards. The only thing developers are required to do in iOS 8 when they're developing a third-party keyboard is they're required to have a way to switch to another keyboard. That's really all a keyboard has to do. I mean, you could probably release a keyboard in the App Store that would just be a big next keyboard button, and Apple would take it because that's the rule. So, but the problem is there's no standard on what it should look like or where it should be. So when you're trying to flip through keyboards quickly, it can be a bit of a challenge to figure out how to do that. And this Apple, the system keyboard, if you hold down that next keyboard button, it'll show a popover with all your keyboards installed. But other keyboards do not have access to that list. So, sometimes pressing the button once will switch to the next keyboard. Sometimes holding the button down will switch to the next keyboard. Sometimes you have to hold that button down until another popover shows up, and then you have to slide your finger over another button in the case of swipe. So you can't just switch between keyboards. It's more like, and then where's that button now? Oh, there it is. Now, oh yeah, over here. Okay. So that's a little surprising for me. It feels like it was a feature that was a little half-baked, and I think Apple needs to refine a bit more.
That's interesting, and I guess I haven't really paid attention to it because I've only really messed with one or two keyboards. And just I've taken that approach. I happen to like the text expander keyboard, just because it's something that I use all the time on the Mac, and now to have everything available on the iOS device is perfect.
Right? Yeah, install 15 keyboards and get back to me. You'll see really quick.
I bet. So I started to ask about handoff. This arguably may be one of the most exciting features. How are you finding it implemented in iOS, the iOS 8 part of it? Is it as good as we expected and as smooth as it was demoed?
No. Just to be honest. Now, I'm not on Yosemite yet. Part of the reason I'm not on Yosemite yet is because I only have one Mac, and if I did anything to screw up this Mac, Adam and Tanya would kill me because I wouldn't be able to finish this book. Plus, the readers would kill me. So I would have it'd be like Airplane. I'd have a whole line of people outside the door with various weaponry. So I haven't got to try. Well, and actually, my Mac, from the old days of 2011, cannot handle handoff anyway. But I have been able to use it between my iPhones and my iPad, and it's a cool feature, but there are certain gotchas to it. Like for instance, if you're let's say you're composing an email in Mail on your iPad and you want to move that to your iPhone. Well, I was under the impression that you could just lock the iPad, set it aside, and pick up your iPhone, and there it'd be. I've never gotten that to work. What I've had to do, and what I've consistently tested, what has to be done is you're on the iPad, you have your email open, then you open and active on the front, and you pick up your iPhone, you turn it on, you awaken it, and then you'll see the little icon. Or if you have the app switcher, if it's already awake, then you do it that way, and then it usually works pretty well. But you have to know that little trick to it. It's and to me that's annoying because I want to be able to be working on something in one room and then walk away from it and pick up another. Maybe it's supposed to work like that. I've never actually gotten that to work. And occasionally I'll be looking at my iPhone and like the maps icon or something random will pop up, even though I haven't used my iPad in a while, and I'll slide the icon up and nothing happens. I'm not sure why that happens. I'm not sure what's going on there. But whatever it is doesn't work. So from that perspective, it's kind of annoying, and it could be improved. It's also annoying that on the Mac it requires low energy Bluetooth 4.0, and it requires it to be installed at the factory. You can't get like a dongle or anything for that because it works over iCloud anyway. So I'm not sure exactly what Bluetooth is there to do. So those things annoy me. I mean, now when it works great. But I can start composing a message on my iPhone and switch over to my iPad. It works pretty smoothly, works consistently. When it fails, though, you're never quite sure why, because the error messages are not very descriptive yet. Like, for instance, if you're composing an email, let's say you have two email accounts. Let's say you have Chuck@joiner.com and Joiner@Chuck.com. Well, if you're composing, let's say you have both of those set up on your iPad, and you're composing an email, and then you go to your iPhone, which has only one of those accounts set up, but not the one you're composing on. Then when you get the handoff symbol and you try handoff, it'll just tell you the connection failed. It's not smart enough to tell you, hey, dummy, you don't have this email account set up here, so I cannot do what you ask. Or it's not smart enough to just switch over to an email account that you do have set up with the same text. So there is room for refinement there. But I mean, it is a promising feature. I don't want to poo-poo it, but it's also not quite as amazing as the presentation made it out to be.
This edition of Mac Voices is supported by Screencasts Online, your source for new Mac and iOS tutorials every week. To learn more and for a 14-day free trial, visit screencastsonline.com. One thing we can all agree on: Don McAllister's Screencasts Online is the gold standard for screencast tutorials. Each week, Screencasts Online delivers a brand new Mac tutorial and also a brand new iOS tutorial. That means each week you get to learn something new for your Mac, iOS device, or both. And we're talking about in-depth, step-by-step instruction, not just quick overviews. And if that isn't enough, Screencasts Online Monthly Magazine brings interesting and informative articles to you each month via Apple's newsstand. With a back catalog of over 500 video tutorials, Screencasts Online is one of the most complete video resources for learning about Apple-oriented software on the web. You can enjoy a 14-day free trial to find out that Screencasts Online is right for you, then sign up for a quarterly or yearly subscription that includes everything, including Screencasts Online magazine. Just visit screencastsonline.com to sign up. Screencasts Online, video tutorials you will really watch and enjoy. Thanks to Screencasts Online for their support of Mac Voices. Josh, you bring up a really, I think, interesting point that some of these features, they have to be set up. I mean, maybe that should not be a surprise. Just like your email cannot magically appear somewhere. You have to go in and set up whatever your email account is on an email client. Right. So, that may not be any big surprise. But sometimes the setup, the stuff I'm reading and the stuff I've experienced is, okay, I've got to go in, I've got to do just this much setup, and then everything will be fine. And I'd love to tell you right now, but it's slipping my mind. Apple Pay. What am I thinking? Mm-hmm. Apple Pay, it's pretty seamless depending on your bank, but you got to go and do it. And all right. There really is, when you fire up 8 for the first time, iOS 8, there's nothing that really necessarily pushes you through some of that.
No, there's no indication
No, I mean, you do have those circumstances where you install it and it asks you to confirm this and confirm that.
Hmm.
But I almost would like to see a screen somewhere that says, would you like to set up Apple Pay? And okay,
Right.
so we'll guide you over here. We'd like to set up handoff, and we'd like to set up, some of the other features.
Right. Well, at least on Apple Pay, Adam and I have a conspiracy theory about that, and the theory is that Apple doesn't want Apple Pay to get too big too fast. They want to have a way to scale it, so they intentionally made it not necessarily hard to use, but hard to find because when you upgrade to 8.1, yeah, you get no screen that says anything about Apple Pay. You get like no indicator, no clue, and I found that so utterly bizarre. And I didn't even know how to set it up. I just kind of randomly opened Passbook. I'm like, it's got to be in Passbook. There's nowhere other place it could be unless they added a new app. And sure enough, yeah, it was in Passbook, and I figured it out. And then, you go out on the town to try it out after you get it set up, and it's like, okay, where can I use this? There's no clues about where I can use it unless you've been to the Apple Pay website or you've been watching their presentations. Oh yeah, McDonald's, that's a big partner. I can go to Subway, I can go to Walgreens. Definitely not Rite Aid or CVS, but I can go to Walgreens. It is a bit of a mystery right now. Once you use it and it works, it's magical. If you've used it, it's like, wow, I can't believe that just worked. That was so easy. But yeah, so that's sort of our theory is that Apple is keeping on the DL for right now to keep it from scaling out of their control. Because Apple has a very bad history with the things it doesn't excel at, which is mostly hardware and design. So and this is something they cannot afford to screw up. Cloud services, they've been throwing spaghetti at a wall for 15 years, and some of it's maybe finally starting to stick, but they don't have that kind of time with a financial product, and they couldn't release Apple Pay beta because no one would accept a beta financial product. If American Express sent you a credit card that was like American Express beta, test it for us for free, you'd be like, no thanks, no thanks. So I think this was their solution for that.
Interesting point. I sort of had not exactly a conspiracy theory, but a similar feeling about the way to implement third-party keyboards. That there was a big discussion about well, they buried it down there so that you have to do this step and this step, and it's like, well, then you get that little message that popped up and says, your information can be sent somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, they don't want to make this too easy to find. They want to make sure that you're savvy and theoretically savvy enough to install a keyboard, will be savvy enough to understand the risks.
You must pass the test before you can use the third-party keyboards.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're probably right. Right.
Well, there've been some other things that have come out now that try to explain what is and is not going. But I was glad to see the warning, and I was kind of happy to see that some less savvy users maybe can't just stumble into it at least right away without maybe having to learn a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Uncle Joe isn't just going to enable one of these by accident, which is a good thing because you don't want him calling you at 2:00 in the morning wondering why his keyboard is just showing pictures of puppies.
Yeah. Or emoji.
Yeah. Why is it all pictures of Jack Nicholson now? I don't understand what's going on. Yeah, that's always an interesting challenge. How do you enable these power user features while not confusing people? Yeah, that's one way to do it, to scare the pants off of them. But there's a good reason that they do make it scary though, because once you enable full access for a third-party keyboard, that keyboard can communicate with its host app, and thus it has all the powers and capabilities of any App Store app. It can talk to any server. Now, in theory, Apple says if you do use this to do something shady, we're going to kick you out. But once that keyboard data is off of your device and in their in a third-party server, Apple has no idea what they're doing with that. They don't know if they're analyzing it to help speed up your typing or if they're just selling it to some ad farm somewhere. Yeah, you have to be careful about who you trust with that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those keyboards that will not work without full access. So you have to make an individual judgment call. I hope Apple in future iOS updates makes that more granular. I hope they add more privacy controls for apps, specifically the keyboard container apps. But I'm sure they will. I'm sure that's more refinement we'll see in the future. But yeah, you really do need to be careful. Like There's a couple of keyboards I've tried out that use animated GIFs. They type in animated GIFs, as people like to do on the internet, and they require full access to even function. Otherwise, it's all smiley faces or something weird like that. And I don't mind giving them full access because what are they going to take? Like, oh, I'm not going to type a password in animated GIFs. I'm sure we'll get emails about my pronunciation of GIF, but I don't care. But that's that's just one of those things you have to consider. I wrote an article about this for Tidbits, and I just explained my rationale. Text Expander Touch needs full access, but I trust them with that because they charge me a whopping $5 for the keyboard, and I know one of the founders of Smile, and I've met these people, so they have a business model. I feel safe with them. SwiftKey, on the other hand, and they don't really care much for me saying this, but I don't really trust their company. I don't really trust their app because they want to do creepy things like access my Gmail account and my Facebook account and analyze my social media posts to help me type faster, which I'm sure is lovely, but no thank you. And then they don't seem to have a business model for the keyboard. But they do collect a lot of data from the keyboard. So no, sorry, just it feels shady, it feels sketchy to me. But I tell readers, hey, make up your own mind. Decide what's right for you. Because I don't know. I mean, they might be a perfectly fine company, and you might have a great experience with the keyboard. Certainly, a lot of people on Android like it, but that's my own thoughts and feelings on the matter.
Yeah, that's a discussion we will take to another show somewhere because
Yeah.
I have thoughts too, but we don't want to veer too far off course. But I will say this: keyboards, of course, iOS 8 came out, and everybody's hot for keyboards, and so you go on there and you see a developer you've never seen before that, okay, so your keyboards can be red, blue, green, purple, whatever, and it's like, first of all, why would I care? But maybe I do. Maybe there's something about readability or accessibility that helps. That's fine. But I need it from someone that I trust. And you're right. We both know Smile. They have a long history, a great reputation. No hesitation there about what they're doing behind the scenes. I can't speak for SwiftKey. I don't know them. I haven't tried their app yet or their keyboard. So. Yeah, you're right. You just no way around it. You got to be a little bit responsible for what you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anything in the book, I guess, Josh, that you feel like people should be aware of? I know you said there are a couple gotchas along the way. Anything else that surprised you maybe as you dug into iOS 8?
Oh well, most of it's not stuff readers of the book will have to worry about. It was mostly things that changed along the way from beta to release, and even from release to later release, or it was things that just depended on this setup or that setup. This was more of a production challenge. I do want to talk a little bit about the structure of the book itself because I wanted to set it up in a way. We had a bit of a debate about this. The desire from Take Control was a book that anyone could pick up and learn iOS, or at least the gist of iOS. But at the same time, I also recognize there's a lot of people out there who do not, they don't need to know how to send an email or set up an email. They know how to do that already. So what we did, I create a section called What's New at the front, and it lists every new feature of iOS 8 that I'm aware of, that I know about. There's probably some hidden developer stuff. I don't know. You don't really need to know all that, but I even talk about some of that. And then we have links to the appropriate section. So if you just want to browse that and see, is there anything new I've missed? Is there anything? I think only half of all available users have updated iOS 8 at this point. So there's still a big pool of people who have not even tried iOS 8. So if that's you haven't tried iOS 8 yet, and you get this book, you can search through this the What's New section, glance through it, something looks interesting, you click the link, you go to that section, find out how to set it up or what it's all about. So that's one thing right there. So if you just want to get started with the new stuff, there you go. Then there's a section after that that's called Things to Check After You've Updated iOS 8. Or if it's a brand new phone, it may even be your first iPhone or iPad, whatnot. So that's a good section to check. Things about security, privacy, various settings that you should check. And by the way, there are chapters. There's a chapter about securing your privacy. There's a chapter about managing your battery, maximizing your battery life, and there's a chapter about accessibility. So even if you think you know everything about iOS, those are three things people always want to know about. People always want more battery life. They always want to make sure they're doing what they can to protect their privacy. And accessibility is a very important topic to me. I have friends who they couldn't use their devices without those features. So we cover the high points of accessibility. That's something I'm always proud to cover in my books. I covered it in Apple TV as well. Other than that, there's can I give a scattershot listing of chapters here? So we kind of started from when you first you first turn on the device. So there's a chapter about the lock screen, and then there'll be a chapter about Control Center, and then Notification Center and notifications, and then and then the home screen, and then we just kind of dial in, from there. Keep dialing down into other things, like there's a chapter on the new health app. There's 2 whole chapters on mail. And when I say chapter, I don't want anyone to think that it's like 30 or 40 pages about each thing. They're only a handful of pages each. And actually, originally they were supposed to be 1 to 3 pages. They're a little longer than that. They might be like 3 to 10 pages. That's probably an average of 5. So it's not super skinny, but it's not super thick either. So, and this is a newer format. If you haven't seen the Take Control of the Crash Course series yet, it's very picture heavy. All the main text is in a left column, and then the right column is pictures, supporting text, sidebars, things like that. So, if a chapter's 5 pages long, that doesn't mean you have to read 5 whole pages. It's really more like 2.5 of text, and then there'll be pretty pictures and sidebars and things like that to kind of split things up and keep it interesting. And of course, it's very browsable. It's even more browsable than our regular Take Control format. So, if you're the sort of person who hates reading technical manuals like me, you don't have to read a whole lot of it. And it's funny, after I came up with the Apple TV book, I tell people, I'm working on a new book, and they would say, oh yeah, well, honestly, I never read your last one. And I'm like, I didn't mean for you to read the whole thing. Right? I just didn't have time to sit down with it. I'm like, it's not Moby Dick. You sit down, you get what you can out of it, and then you leave. I'm actually kind of hurt if people tell me they read the whole thing, because I'm like, why did you have that much free time? I mean, I am honored. I don't want to insult my fans, but at the same time, that's sort of the design philosophy behind it. You don't have to sit down and read the whole thing if you don't want to. I mean, you're more than welcome to. It's a free country, but we try to make it convenient for the reader.
I love the new format of the crash courses for just that reason, that they are much more browsable. They encourage me to go and zoom in on a particular topic or something that I'm looking for right then. Like you say, it's not supposed to be a manual for iOS 8. It's almost more of a feature reference guide that kind of helps you go through the features that you really want to go through.
Right. And we also cover, all the new features like family sharing. There's a whole chapter dedicated to that. That was probably the toughest chapter in the whole book, to tell you the truth, because that's a very complicated feature. You want to talk about ins and outs and gotchas. Okay, family sharing. Family sharing is nothing but ins and outs and gotchas and if-thens and if-that's. I'll give you an example. Right here. So let's say you have a child who's 12 years old, who is under the age of 13, which is the legal age when you can set up an account, an online account in the United States. So before iOS 8, if you want to set up an account for your kid, you just had to lie and say they're 18 and do it illegally. I don't think anyone ever went to jail for it, but so Apple created this feature in family sharing where you can create an account for a child under 13. I actually created an account for my 14-month, 1-year-old son for the book. Here's the thing. Once you've created an account for a child, you cannot delete that account. They cannot delete that account. No one can delete a child's account. The only way, now mind you, a family group can only have 6 people. So if for some reason you need to get that kid off your account, you have to transfer that child to another family circle. Like, but and I'm going to be a little morbid here. I'm going to be a little macabre, but this is real life. This is something that happens. So what happens if the child dies? Uh, like I think they were anticipating the situation of if there's a divorce or something, and the home splits up. Oh well, fine. You can have the kid now on that. But like, what happens? I mean, God forbid, what happens if your kid dies? Now you're going to have a constant reminder in your phone of that painful memory, and it's something Apple did not think all the way through. There are other little gotchas as well. Like for instance, the iTunes Match, that does not get shared among your family members. So if you have that, if you rely on that, and a lot of people already share an iTunes App Store account, and because of that, they're able to share apps and they're able to share iTunes Match. Well, and this is something I discussed in the book. Think carefully before you make that transition, because you may not be good doing that. Your best option may be just to sit still and go with what works for you now. Family sharing may not be the best option, and actually developers can opt out of family sharing. So and a lot of people already do this system, where they do share the App Store, they share the iTunes account, and then they have separate iCloud accounts. So don't be, make sure all your important apps support family sharing, because you don't want to get a situation you move over to family sharing and suddenly, oh, I can't use this app and that app. I have yet to hear of an app that does not support family sharing, but I'm sure it's going to happen. I'm sure it's going to come up, especially with more expensive apps, with more kind of professionally geared apps. I think most of those are probably moving away from the App Store anyway, to be honest. But something to be aware of, something to be advised about. So there are lots of little things there.
And I have not explored family sharing at all because I'm single, so I don't have that issue. But I have seen just a couple comments go through Twitter that made me wonder. And thank you for that update. And it sounds like that may be one of the most useful chapters in the whole book, if it applies to you.
Right. And I've heard a lot of people having great experiences with family sharing. And I think it's a good feature. It's just there's lots of gotchas. So, lots of little things. So, be careful, be alert before you jump on board there.
And hopefully some of the misses will be fixed in another update or two.
Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like an obvious thing. At some point, there may be a reason you need or want to delete account, not just transfer it over.
Right. Now you can kick out an adult's account. That's one thing I want to explain real quick. Any account under the age of 13 is considered a child by family sharing standards. Any account over the age of 18 or 18 or I should say 13 or younger, 18 or older. Actually, it's under 18. Sorry, or 18 or older is considered an adult. And there are different. For instance, you can't put as many limitations on an adult's account as you can on a child's account. So it's lots of things they haven't thought all the way through, and hopefully that'll be refined in iOS 9 and later.
But as you sit and talk about it, it sounds like, I mean, again, I haven't played with it, but there are a lot of complexities here. As you said, divorces, people unfortunately passing away, that need to be really thought through as far as how you handle this. The 6-person limit. I mean, that doesn't
Right.
seem like a lot. I understand you don't want to create a family circle for the entire neighborhood, but on
Sure.
the other hand, 6 people doesn't seem to be as many as I would have thought.
Right. I mean, maybe most families aren't that big nowadays, but hey, there's still some big families out there. I mean, well, I mean, I just can think of certain situations in my own life. For instance, my dad passed away when I was 16, and I had my brother was only like 3 or 4 months old at the time, and so I was in this weird situation where as he grew up, I was kind of the adult in this situation, especially when it came to technological things, because my mom didn't have a clue about any of that stuff. So, like, if I had been if family sharing had been a thing then, and we've been sharing our accounts through this system, that would have caused so many problems if we'd all been honest about our ages. Because, for instance, if you are not I have to make sure I'm trying to make sure I get these details correctly because I can't remember them all off the top of my head. It's pretty complicated. But for instance, I can't. If someone isn't an adult, if someone isn't 18 or older, you cannot make that person a guardian. So theoretically, in this situation, let's say my mother had been the family organizer, but then she couldn't have made me the guardian to enable Ask to Buy for my brother. And if she didn't know, I mean, I would have taught her how to do it. I'm just thinking I'm thinking in a purely hypothetical on paper sense here. But you can, if you think a little bit, or people who have kind of unusual situations, you can think of some situations where there would need to be more flexibility in there. Like if my mom had gotten Asked to Buy request for my brother, she wouldn't know what to do with it half the time probably, and then she'd be asking me instead of it just being able to send it to me. So these are things Apple needs to think out more. They need to think through all the way. They need to think about unfortunate things like deaths. And, sometimes someone under the age of 18 having to take agency over things. That is a legal situation that happens. Sometimes mine wasn't a legal situation, but sometimes that is a legal situation. It's complex. It's complicated. It's a sticky thing to be in. I think Apple has handled it pretty well, all things considered. But, needs more refinement, though.
Needs more refinement. So let's just go over the basics of the book again. We have, this is iOS 8, a Take Control Crash Course. It's available alone for
$10.
$10, but it's available as part of the bundle with Yosemite, a Take Control Crash Course by Shawley McFarland, and Digital Sharing for Apple Users by Joe Kissel.
Right, digital sharing for Apple users.
Good, I got the title right. Joe and I had a little trouble with it. And it's available as a bundle to let you get the whole package and pay just a little bit less. Good.
So yeah.
Well, Josh, congratulations on your second book for Take Control.
All right, thank you, Chuck.
How does it feel to be a 2-book author now?
Well, exhausting.
Well, come back when number 3 is up, or maybe don't wait until then. Come back on the Mac Jury when we have a chance, okay?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Hey, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Folks, that's Josh Centers. Again, he's the author of iOS 8, a Take Control Crash Course at takecontrolbooks.com. Go check it out and learn everything about iOS 8 that you need to know and that we didn't get to cover here. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard at macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.